Coming to the Tainted Tavern, come sit a while for free. We talk about our musings and devices we've been using.
Welcome to the Tainted Tavern, and today I've got a whiskey review for you. I'm also going to have a bit of a pipe tobacco review here because I'm going to smoke a bowl of Ennerdale Flake from Galway, and I'm going to smoke it in this old briar here, which I really like this briar. It's an apple shape, it's a straight. The majority of pipes I smoke are bents. I tend to prefer bents, but I do like this straight. This is Mark London briar, a real briar block. It's got a lovely grain on there, and I had this as an estate pipe several years ago. Done my usual restoration of it, polishing up the stem. But it's a really beautiful pipe, and it's a very good smoker. Now today the whiskey I want to talk about and review is a blended whiskey, and it is a Ballantine's Finest blended Scotch whiskey. This is, by volume of sales, this is the #2 best-selling Scotch whiskey in the world. This video is going to be primarily about whiskey with a bit of pipe smoking joy thrown in, which is why the thumbnail here is titled Ways to Get to Heaven Part 1, because this, if I did not plug my new book, A Dark History of Whiskey, out now from Pencil Books, available anywhere the books are sold. This is a whiskey book like no other. So that's A Dark History of Whiskey by Gary Dodds. If you're interested in whiskey at all, then I would point you towards this book, because it's a totally different type of whiskey book. Most whiskey books concentrate on the history of the drink, the history of certain distilleries, certain well-known distilleries. That does that, but it's also got a lot more. It's got its emphasis on the darker side of whiskey, whiskey noir, if you like. So I would recommend that book to you. But anyway, back to the Ballantines and why I think it's important to review some of these these ubiquitous whiskies that you can get everywhere, the likes of Ballantine's, the like of Famous Grouse, the likes of White and Mackay, Bell's, Teachers, Johnny Walker, Red, Black, whatever. Because if you're starting out on your whiskey reviews, then on your whiskey journey, rather, then YouTube is a brilliant resource. But there are also dangers when navigating YouTube for whiskey reviews, because it can give you a wrong impression of the drink. There are some brilliant whiskey reviewers on YouTube, some wonderful whiskey reviewers, but there are a lot of whiskey reviewers which tend to follow a herd mentality, and that is the herd that says the single malts are far superior to blends, and anything that is reasonably priced like this, they tend to use the word cheap. Well, I don't think the word cheap is really fitting. I mean, something like this Ballantine 70 cl comes in at around 20, 22, 23 pounds. That's not cheap. It's on the cheaper end of the market, the inexpensive end of the market, but it's not cheap, is it? I mean, 20 odd pound for 70 cl, that's not cheap. It's reasonable. So I don't use the word cheap whiskies, because it's almost, to say this is a cheap whiskey, it's almost derogatory, isn't it? It's like saying, oh, this is a cheap pair of jeans, this is a cheap car. You know, it's a derogatory. The word cheap is derogatory in itself. So these are rather readily available, inexpensive whiskies, and inexpensive again is relative, because you could say paying 22, 23, 24 pound for a drink is not inexpensive. In fact, it's expensive, but in comparison to some of the single malts out there, and even some of the higher grade blended, the aged blended whiskies such as Johnny Walker Black, which is aged 12 years, these are inexpensive in comparison. Now, when you check out your whiskey reviews on YouTube, you find that a lot of reviewers will tend to always badly review the likes of Ballantine, the likes of Famous Grouse, the likes of White and Mackay, because they feel that if they give a positive rating to something like this, they're going to lose all credibility within the YouTube community, because there's a lot of snobbery around single malts. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy single malt whiskey. I regularly buy Lafroy, the 10-year-old, I think, is a great expression, and I regularly buy that. I probably buy several bottles of that a year. There's a lot of single malts that I drink. I don't buy the high-end expensive single malts. If something's more than, say, 80, 90 pounds a bottle, I won't buy it unless it's a very special occasion and I'm in the mood to actually try it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this Ballantine's whiskey today, which has a rich heritage. Like Johnny Walker, its origins lie in a grocery store in Scotland, where the grocer was blending whatever whiskies were available and selling them to his customers under his own name, Ballantine's. Blending a whiskey is an art form as much as a science. Now, what is a blended whiskey? Well, a blended whiskey is basically collections of single malts and grain whiskey blended together to provide a consistent flavour profile time after time after time. So when you drink it,
sermonize, criticize, talking and talking and talking. All you gotta do is keep walking.
So when you're drinking this Ballantine's blended Scotch whiskey, you're actually drinking 40 different kinds of single malts go into this, as well as 3 or 4 grain whiskies. So it's interesting in itself. I'm also going to smoke a bowl now of this Ennerdale Flake from Gawath Ogath. Ennerdale Flake, primarily Maryland, Virginia tobaccos in here, but it's got that famous Lakeland topping, which some describe as soapy, but to me it's got a floral taste. Now it's a flake cut, so you rub out the flakes before you put them in your pipe. It's got a very distinctive taste. There are similarities for Ennerdale Flake towards something like Condo. Condo also has a Lakeland style topping, but the Lakeland topping on Ennerdale Flake in comparison to Condo is much more potent. So you have rose oil. The room note on this stuff also is quite pleasant. So anyway, let's get a glass of this Ballantine's poured out into a Glencairn for tasting reasons, because Glencairn glasses are the perfect vessels for experiencing a whiskey for the first time because of the shape. The tulip type bottom leading up in a chimney allows the aromas to be directed towards the nose. And then we'll talk a little bit about the whiskey now. Full disclosure, the way I usually drink my blended Scotch is over the rocks. That is on ice, which again, whiskey purists will sometimes look down on that and say, the only way to drink whiskey, dear boy, is straight up with a grimace as it burns going down. That's a load of rubbish. You should drink your drink the way you want to. You pay for your drink, so you should drink it the way you want to. But I do take a whiskey neat for the purposes of a review. But when I'm relaxing of an evening, I will enjoy my whiskey over the ice, so Scotch on the rocks. And it sounds so cool, doesn't it? So there's a reason for doing that. It just sounds cool, doesn't it? Could I have a Scotch, please? That sounds cool, that sounds pretty sophisticated, but it takes it to another level when you say, could I have a Scotch, please? On the rocks. Sums up all those visions of Humphrey Bogart, don't it? And smoky, shadowy rooms.
As I watch the sun descending and the birds fly home to rest, in the hush when day is ending, that's the hour when I feel blessed. Smoking my pipe, smoking my pipe.
A wonderful pipe though. The tobacco, Ennerdale, gives a sweet, a rosy type taste, which some describe as soapy, which I think can throw a novice pipe smoker, because I remember the first time, and we go back many years now, but I remember the first time I tried Condo, and that soapy taste that stuck to the back of my mouth. It was quite horrendous then, but as I progressed and my palate got more used to the nuances, found in certain tobaccos then. That soapy taste suddenly wasn't soapy anymore. It was just so intense, creamy. Its light is terrible.
Like a whisper through the cornfield comes a gentle evening breeze. At the doorway of my cottage I recall old memories. Smoking my pipe.
This supplies a creamy, rich mouthfeel. Let's go to the Ballantines. Interestingly, this whiskey, the late great actor Oliver Reed once said in a chat show that Ballantines was his favourite Scotch. But to be honest, when he said that, he said something like, Ballantines is my favourite Scotch whiskey, and the reason for this is because when you drop it, it doesn't roll away from you because of the the bottle design, I suppose. So that was Oliver Reed thinking behind why he classed Ballantines as his favourite whiskey. I think Oliver Reed couldn't care less. He just liked any alcohol, didn't he? So let's take this Ballantines to the nose. A nice clean aroma on the nose. You get some ethanol. There's also almost a florally essence to this as well, which means it pairs well with the Ennerdale Flake. There's that slight burn from the ethanol, and the finish is quite subdued, but a nice, it's got an oily coating on the back of the mouth. I watched a review on YouTube of this whiskey last night, and they said that there was no finish on this, and it was very watery. And as I say, I just feel it's like the Emperor's New Clothes, isn't it? They follow in suit. They follow in what these reviewers, these single malt reviewers, and it's nothing short of snobbery that they won't even consider a blended whiskey. And they just follow in suit. It's the Emperor's New Clothes. There's nothing wrong with the finish on this. It's not, is there any, I don't think there's much peat in this. There's not much of a smoky peatiness to this. It's more of an easy-going, mellow Scotch than a smoky iteration. So yeah, creamy, maybe some citrus. The finish is a slight ethanol burn on the finish, I think. I really am in heaven now. Scotch, bowl of good tobacco. It's got that floral, and I say some people describe the taste of these Lakeland or any Lakeland style tobacco to be soapy. I don't get that. I did it one time when I was a novice pipe smoker, but I've been smoking a pipe now for more than 30 years, and perhaps my palate has become accustomed to the strength and the intensity of some of these flavours in certain tobaccos, so I'm not getting a smoking it.
Smoking my pipe. Those far off places beyond the blue, familiar faces that once I knew. I recall those days behind me and the happiness they meant. Every sundown you will find me with a heart that is content. Smoking my pipe.
Maybe a slight hint of a lemon note in the citrus you're getting from the Ballantines. So yeah, Ennerdale is an old style, traditional type pipe tobacco. It's got its old style, almost old fashioned taste, traditional, which is quite delicious. Now when I packed this pipe, I rubbed the flakes out I used half a flake, rubbed it out, placed it into the pipe in the usual packing method. Then I put a quarter of a flake, which I used the stuff and fold method, because some people claim that stuffing and folding, rather than rubbing out the tobacco, you stuff and fold, gives a different taste experience, a more intense taste experience. And whilst I'm not sure if that's true or not, I have been experimenting with both methods. The only downside I feel of the stuff and fold is it tends to be more difficult to get the pipe going to its optimum temperature. It tends to go out a lot, hence why I had some trouble, I think, lighting this originally, but now it's gone again. There's a nice ash on the top, a nice silvery grey ash on the top. It's very good. Now, back to the Valentines. This time, over ice, Scotch on the rocks, which is the way I tend to drink my whiskey more often than not. And as I say, you will, if you're new to whiskey and you want to experiment with this, which I maintain whiskey is the most complex of all drinks. If you want to experiment with the different whiskies out there, the different tastes, the different experiences, and you start looking on YouTube or reading whiskey books, you will, before too long, come across the opinion that there's only one way to drink whiskey, and that is totally neat, totally straight, with nothing at all. Sometimes they will make a little compromise and say maybe a splash of water, 1 or 2 drops of water, which I do actually sometimes drink whiskey like that, neat, with the exception of 1 or 2 drops of water. But the way I relax and the way I enjoy my whiskey more often than not is on the rocks over ice, and there's nothing wrong with that. It challenges slightly because the water, the ice starts to melt into the glass, so it does deproof the whiskey slightly. Now this Valentine's comes in at 40% ABV, so that's 80 proof, and it does take it down slightly, but that's not a problem, is it? I mean, I'm going to try now, and this is, I'm going to try and be honest with this, because I've just drunk a glass, a measure, straight now, and describe the differences that I'm getting with the Valentine's. So it's the same drink, but with the addition of ice. So to the nose. Now the ice has toned down the ethanol, without a doubt it's toned down the ethanol, so the aroma is fresher. Not necessarily better, but fresher, less punchy on the nose. But you do get that sweet, floral, citrus aroma. Let's take it to the palate. Now that's the way, in my opinion, the whiskey should be drunk, over the ice, on the rocks. But that's, as I say, that's subjective. That's to my taste buds. I mean, when I first got into whiskey many years ago, I'd buy a blended Scotch. I'm not going to say cheap, an inexpensive blended of Scotch, a commonplace blended Scotch in any supermarket, and I would drink it as a mixer. That's how I first got into whiskies, using them as mixers, drinking it with ginger beer or with Coke or whatever. But eventually I leant more towards a true Scotch taste, and not only Scotch, but bourbon, Irish whiskey, Japanese whiskies, English whiskies, all type of whiskies. I got more to find my palate was more suited to the unadorned taste of whiskey. Although I will, especially in the summer, I will enjoy a whiskey cocktail. The cocktail of choice for me is my own take on the Kentucky Mule, which is basically bourbon, ginger beer, over the ice with a slice of lemon, a slice of lime. But I sometimes make a Kentucky Mule with Scotch, so I think of it more as a Scottish Mule, or sometimes I'll do it with, say, an English whiskey, such as the fantastic single malt that cut from Cotswolds. So that would become an English Mule then. You should experiment. You should find whichever way suits you when you're drinking your whiskey. or smoking your pipe, whatever. You should experiment and find the way that suits you best. There is no rights or wrongs of whiskey drinking, of pipe smoking, of anything. And this Valentine's, it's a fine blended whiskey. You are getting a whiskey experience, whether you drink it neat or over the rocks like me, or even in a mixer. You are getting a whiskey experience, and you are getting that complex, myriad tastes and expressions you get from whiskey. Don't listen to the reviewers who say this is shit, this is rubbish, because they just say that for the sake of saying it, because they want their viewers to feel that their palate is more refined. They know better than we do. That's absolute bollocks. I've never been lucky enough to drink a whiskey that costs several thousands of pounds. But I've seen some reviews of some people drinking whiskies that cost several thousands of pounds, and they're in the barn, and good on them. But that whiskey they're drinking, you'll never convince me that, although it may be good, although it may be exceptional, although it may be a wonderful experience, it's not, that experience they receive, it is not thousands and thousands of pounds better than something like this. It's just not. It's just nonsense. Over the Rocks is such a smooth drink. Yes, I'm aware that I've taken down the proof of the whiskey, but it's still whiskey, and that's how I enjoy it. So what is the problem with that? Whether I was drinking it here in an eyeball glass with cola, ice, lemon, what would it matter if I was enjoying it? You pay for your whiskey, you should enjoy it, you should take it the way you want it. I'm going to have another few puffs on this Ennerdale now. It's gone out because I've been talking a lot. I like this Ennerdale Flake. It's a distinctive taste. I think I could identify Ennerdale Flake 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, even in a blind tasting. If you set out 9 or 10 pipes for me with different tobaccos in each pipe, one of them being Ennerdale Flake, I'm not told which it was. I think I could identify this. The taste of this is so distinctive. The name's also cool too, Ennerdale Flake. It sounds like my favourite soap opera, Emmerdale, which I still think of as Emmerdale Farm because I'm old school. And don't forget, A Dark History of Whisky by Gary Dobbs, available now anywhere books are sold. Okay, well, I'm talking about a blended Scotch here. I've got the hiccups, or as we call it in pipe smoking terms, the nickups, and that's caused by the high nicotine content in the Ennerdale Flake. In terms of nicotine, it's quite potent. As I say, we're talking about a blended Scotch whisky here, and I'm trying to dispel the snobbery that exists, that is very much real on YouTube, whisky reviews, which says single malt's good, blended whiskey crap, load of rubbish. Now, in my book, A Dark History of Whisky, there's a section at the end where I review certain whiskies. The majority of this book is not whisky reviews, like a standard run-of-the-mill whisky book, but there are some at the end. And I've gone on to blended Scotch whisky here, and this is what it says in page 167 of the book. I'm reading out directly from this book, A Dark History of Whisky. Scotch blends. Blended Scotch makes the biggest selling whisky category in the world and counts for more than 90% of global sales, with the remainder being made up of everything else. So do the maths. There are more than 100 malt distilleries in Scotland alone, and none of these could function based on a limited, though growing, share of the whisky market held by single malts. Those distilleries owe their very existence to the blended whisky industry. Blended whisky. It is thanks to the blenders that malt distilleries are able to make a profit by supplying their whisky to the blended houses who blend the malts and single grain whiskies to come up with a consistent product time after time. The art of blending, and it is an art rather than a science, comes only from a deep understanding of the nuances of each single malt and grain whisky and the qualities that each can bring to a blend.
Come into the Tainted Tavern, come sit a while for free. We talk about our musings and devices we've been using.